one sentence. It is normal. And what we call normal is actually what we are used to seeing and hearing. What is shaped by culture, tradition, and repetition. We use this phrase so often we stop questioning what actually it means. Because harm doesn't look like harm. It looks like everyday conversation. And that is exactly what it makes so powerful. Let me give an example. Comments about appearances. We often hear phrases like, you are too skinny, you have gained weight, or you should eat more or less. Yes, at first, this kind of phrases may sound like care or casual conversation, but when they are repeated over and over time, they stop being neutral. They start to create a constant external evaluation. People start to see their own bodies not through their own perception, but through the eyes of others. According to Mental Health Foundation, 34% of adults experienced sadness and low self-esteem because of their body image. And 20% people felt shame, and 90% felt disgust toward their own bodies. These are not just numbers. These are millions of people learning to see themselves through criticism instead of confidence. And the most dangerous part is when messages are repeated, they externally became internal thoughts. Then people don't need society to criticize them because they begin to it by themselves. And that is why normal doesn't always mean right. Just because society has analyzed that body shaming doesn't mean that it is harmless, because words can be temporary, but what about the psychological impact? What about the feelings? They can remain for years. Another example is gender expectations. We often hear phrases like, girls should be modest, they should behave in a certain way, or on the other side, men should show their emotions, because crying is a weakness. And in many cases, girls are unconsciously perceived as more fragile, less strong, simply because of their gender. What about the impact? Impact is much more deeper. According to psychological research, it has real consequences. For example, studies in emotional regulation show that most people, especially boys and men, are taught to suppress their emotions. But these emotions do not disappear. They tend to build up internally, increase the level of stress, and making it harder to manage their feelings in a healthy way. Researchers also link long-term emotional suppression to difficulties in communication and in low psychological well-being. And over time, girls became less likely to express their opinions, to express their ideas, to speak confidently in the private settings and take risks, not because they lack of ability, but because they have learned what is expected. Society normalizes emotional suppression and calls it strength, but psychology proves that suppressed emotions do not disappear. They increase the level of stress and emotional instability. So these ideas are not just words. They influence how people think, how people see themselves and think. So we can see the same pattern in our social traditions, for example, weddings. In countries, in certain Asian countries, in many communities, there's a belief good wedding is very expensive, very big, very elaborate, but not everyone wants the same thing. There are some people who want a very simple, very personal wedding with their close ones, with their relatives, and it is not because they cannot afford more, but because they prefer invest in their future, invest in their future, in their education, housing, and stable life. But many people think that the more decoration, more guests, and more spending, then the more respect we can get. Let me give an example. A friend of mine from Samarkand region. Look, Samarkand is a region where weddings are expected very elaborate, very lavish, very big, yeah? So originally they wanted a very simple wedding with their friends. But as preparation started, expectations from the society and from the should look like in a certain way, you should invite more guests, there should be more decoration. And at the end, the wedding turned out to be very elaborate, very impressive, very traditional. But what left with me from that day? Not the wedding itself, but the question that left behind. Was this real their choice, or it was expected from them? According to the survey, 67% of couples, new families, went into debt because of the wedding expenses. And researchers show that in the Spanish movement, about 25% of Uzbeks pay for their wedding expenses through loans. And many respondents admitted that the main cause is social pressure after such kind of expensive celebrations. So take a moment and think about it. Because not everyone spent money because they truly want to, but because it was expected from the society. Because people are afraid of judgment. Because in our community, simplicity is seen as embarrassment instead of wisdom. Not every tradition, not social expectation is deserved to continue simply because it has lasted for a long time. Think about it. And the next time, when something that makes you uncomfortable, pause and ask yourself, is this my choice, or it was expected from the society? What about the consequences? Consequences are not immediate, but they are real. People start to doubt their bodies. They start to suppress their emotions, and simply, without noticing, they start to live according to what is expected from them, not because what they are truly wanting. And the moment when you start to change, the moment when you start to question what is actually means normal, this phrase, the moment when you choose understanding over the judgment, it is the moment when we start changing it. Because not everything that is considered normal deserves normal. Thank you.